up Pastor Roger Thompson from Calvary Chapel, Maricopa, to give us the invocation, after which I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise.
God, you are so good. Lord, we just pray that you would guide this time as we meet our city council, our mayor, Price, and Lord, we ask, God, that you would give us wisdom and direction in all things pertaining to the business of our community. Lord, we lift up our school district, our school teachers. We ask, God, that you would be guiding the decisions made there. Lord, and we thank you so much, Lord, for our first responders, our police, our fire, our paramedics, Lord, in our city. They do such an awesome job. And Lord, it's a blessing. I hope we don't take it for granted that we live in a free country, a country that stands on you and all that you have gifted us with. Lord, we ask, God, that you would just continue, Lord, to give us the ability to stand free in you. Lord, God, we just pray that you would lead our nation in a time when it's divided. Lord, I pray that we'd come together. So we ask, God, that you would bless our time, and Lord, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, Pastor Thompson. We appreciate it. At this time, we'd like to move to a roll call, please.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilwoman Gussie.
Here.
Councilmember Manfredi.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Wade.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chapados.
Here.
Mayor Price.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Great. We have one presentation to make. Come down. Just wanted to make a general presentation here. This may seem old hat for all of you, but it's a big deal for us. And that is that once again, and in fact, Brenda, would you like to come on up here? So Brenda is our Director of Finance. And so one of the things that we feel is really important, and I'm pretty sure you all feel the same way, and that is to pretty much protect and safeguard your money, because that's our job. And so one of the things that we often try and figure out is how to best utilize that money, and sometimes we differ on that, but at the end of the day, the accounting of that money and where it goes and how it was spent and is it all accounted for, that's all really important. And so once again, we've been awarded the Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. This is called the GFOA Award. I think we have it, 8 years running now? 10 years running, a decade. So this is the 10 years. So many congratulations to our finance department, to Brenda, and to the city of Maricopa. Walking away from the picture. Thank you very much. So again, congratulations. That's exciting to see that for over a decade now. That'll take us to item 4, report from the mayor. A couple of housekeeping items just really quickly. There's a subdivision ordinance. This is the notice of the 30-day public review. It's available for public review at the Maricopa Library, the City Hall, and the city's website. If you have any questions, you can see Kazi, who's right here in the audience there in the front. But I'm sure a lot of that stuff will be out there in the main area for you. A couple other things. I don't mean to belabor points that have already been made earlier by my council members, but there's been a lot going on in the past few weeks. You may or may not have seen that or been participatory in it, but for those of you that were, we appreciate it. We spent about 48 hours as a council here on Monday and Tuesday. I was starting to wonder when the cots were going to be brought in so we could just sleep here. But we went through a lot of city manager interviews, and there's a lot of reasons for the value of a city manager. Our interim city manager, Tricia, has been here and helping us for the last few months as you transition between them. It's a really big deal, and it's one of those few things in which the city council actually does the hiring and firing of the city manager. We operate under what's called a council manager form of government. So while the council sets the policy, it's the city manager's job to basically hire and fire all of the city employees, and their job is to implement the policy that we set. So it's one of those things that we take very seriously. We listened to more comments and commentary than you can probably possibly imagine, and believe you me, we listened to it all. It's hard to talk about because when you're talking about a position like this, you know, it's dealing with an HR issue, and so as an HR issue, you go into executive session to discuss it. But I can tell you that the seven of us covered every single topic that you either brought up to us or thought of, mentioned to us, or you know, talked about, and we regurgitated that in our discussions backwards and forwards. And so ultimately, I think we've made the selection, and we'll get to that tonight. But I'm thankful for all of my colleagues for all the work that they did, and certainly to all of you who came, participated, perhaps watched online through the different media sources, or participated on the panel. So again, thank you very much. As we move forward, there's a lot of things that take place, and one of the other things that we did today, three of us sat on a council subcommittee called the BFO, or the Budget, Finance, and Operations Committee. This is where we basically vet and go line by line through the budget, all of the different requests for additional increases on things, you know, departments that are drowning in a given area, needing more staff, things that we can cut back on, all these different avenues of the budget, so that, you know, just like we talked about that budget award, you know, where does that money go? How is it best spent? And then ultimately, we go through that laborious back and forth for many, many hours as we did today, and then we take that to the entire council, upon which we have more discussions on, and ultimately the council makes that final decision as an entire body. So that was a busy day today leading into city council meetings, but I wanted to fill you in on some of also the past week. Last week I had the opportunity to attend I don't want to call it a function, but a trip to Washington, D.C. And the reason I was there is that one of the things that we're always trying to deal in our budget is find outside ways to save money. When you hire an employee here, it costs money. It costs your money. And so we're always looking for methods and ways in which we can save you that money if possible. And so we are looking for outside of the box ways of doing that, and one of those ways is through federal grants. And so one of the things you have to understand is when you're competing for a federal grant, there are a lot of other people out there competing for the same grants. And so you got to spend a lot of time in DC talking to the right people so that you can get the right information, so you can write the right grant, and that you can win it. And ultimately that saves you all money as you go to hire someone. And these grants are specific to our public safety. We've won police grants in the past, and we continue to apply for them. We also have been lucky enough through these trips to DC to get the information we need. We met with FEMA, who is in charge of some of these grants. We were there for the firefighters this time, and we're looking to bring on more firefighters that we need for our stations and our trucks. And so ultimately that helps our response times, and again, it saves you money. So I think that at the end of the day, these trips are very valuable, but it's all about who you meet and why and who you talk with when you're there. So we meet with our congressional delegation, we meet with FEMA, and just about anybody else we can speak with at that time. Had the opportunity to attend a very unique ceremony on Sunday. Was offered to attend a unique event. I don't know if any of you in the audience subscribe to this religion, but there's apparently a Hindu temple in the city of Maricopa area. It's actually in the county, but it's down along Papago Road. And in the Hindu religion, most people that are Hindu typically come from the area of India. Not necessarily everyone, but most people. And from that standpoint, most Indians and most Hindu followers or believers will never get to see a temple dedicated because most of them have been built thousands of years ago. And so it was a really unique experience to be invited to see an actual spiritual Hindu temple be consecrated here right before our eyes, and people came from all over the country to see that. I think as they become a big player in this area, in this region, they are very kind people and asked to participate in any way that they could in the city and want to partner with us in different facets so that they can be good regional partners. And so just wanted to convey that to you. It was a wonderful experience. Also had lots of meetings at the Arizona League of Cities and Towns. The Arizona State Legislature is in right now. Anytime they're in, we're always trying to figure out how they're going to hurt us this time. But we're always trying to protect your interests, i.e. our interests as a local city and town government. We have a core philosophy that local control is really important, because at the end of the day, you probably see me or one of your council members in the grocery store on a regular basis, and when the tomatoes come out, that's probably who you're throwing them at. So, at the end of the day, you probably want to talk to us. But we don't get to have all the say because we're not the state elected officials. And so we do our best to represent your interests at the Capitol, and we spend a lot of time there. And then finally, I would just report that I think, I don't want to make any out of place comments here, but I think Pathway was looking to get some free teaching. So they asked me to come and teach the government and economics class for about 4 hours 2 weeks ago. And so I went in and taught government and economics for 4 hours, and did four or five different classes, just depending on their transition, and it was a wonderful experience. But we got to talk a lot about the city of Maricopa, what it is to be an elected official, and again, what I do as a real job, quote unquote, and what my profession is as a financial advisor. So it was a wonderful opportunity to participate with our children and with the school, and so hopefully we'll get to do more of that in the future. And that concludes my report, as a report from the mayor at this time. Turn it over to the report from the city manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, the only thing I'd like to add is that we had interviews yesterday for Community Services Director. We've narrowed it down to 4 candidates. We are going to be having a meet and greet next Tuesday instead of the council work session with those 4 candidates. So we're going to invite the public and you to come and meet the candidates and give us your feedback on them. And that'll be next Tuesday, I believe, 5:30.
5:30. So we encourage you all to come, ask your questions, and see how they'll do an excellent job for us, and give us your feedback. Appreciate that. Thanks. That takes us to item 6, which is the call to the public. I have 3 or 4 speaker cards. I'll go to those first, after which the time is yours, so we encourage you to come up. We do have a 3-minute timer up here, so just to make sure we provide enough time for everybody. With that, I would like to call up Cynthia Morgan, as I have her card here first. Cynthia, come on up.
Hi, thank you for hearing me. I wanted to clarify the miscommunication. First of all, I was not asking you to have the chamber take over for MCE. I want to clarify that. I was saying that I'm wanting to know why there is such a hurry to spend more taxpayer money on a program that for the last 3 years has not worked. I was suggesting that we slow our roll and we take the time to work with the chamber and see what the chamber can do. I am not talking about you awarding that. That ship sailed. I've already understood how the city stands on that. I still feel that the MCE program is a program that this city taxpayers should not be putting this kind of money into at this time. I think it's more important for the seniors that want the pickleball courts to get their pickleball courts, for example. I think that the chamber is in place and the chamber is capable of doing this, of building businesses, work with the chamber. All I was asking was for you to take 6 months, give it 6 months before you are in a rush to go out and spend taxpayer money on something that may not work again. If you're going to build businesses and an entrepreneurship program in Maricopa, you need to be here full time. You don't need to be based in another state. I'm not sure where it is. I just went by what I've been told and some of the rumors I've heard. And like I said, there's all kinds of media stuff now, and it's been thrown around. I was only going on things that I was told by people that I trusted. It was still $200,000 minimum a year for 3 years for a program that brought the taxpayers no business whatsoever to Maricopa. That's a failure. I'm sorry. And I admire you for what you've done. I admire the city council, and I know that you always have the interests of the city at heart and the taxpayers. I'm just asking you to slow down, and why hurry and say we've got to spend this money now when we don't? Take time, work with the chamber. It's a good chamber that's in place. These people are entrepreneurs. They've started businesses. They can help with an entrepreneur program. But I'm not asking you to give them the MCE program. I'm basically saying I don't think the MCO program as it is something we need to spend taxpayer money on. And I just wanted to clarify that, and I thank you very much for letting me speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Appreciate it. Bill Griffin. And then Rich, you're on deck.
Thank you, sir. I want to introduce myself. My name is Bill Griffin. I'm a candidate to become the next constable for the Maricopa-Stanfield Judicial District. I've got 25 years in law enforcement. I retired and moved to Maricopa in 2007. Since being here, I'm a master gardener. I don't know if that means a whole lot. I still don't know what I'm doing most of the time. I volunteered at the high school for security when my daughter was a senior there. That turned into employment at the school. That turned into being the truancy officer of the school district till 2010. I went back to farming and found myself next working as a contract investigator for the Department of Homeland Security. I'm back to retiring and back to being a farmer. 4 years ago, I decided to look into the constable position. Last year, I decided to run. So I look forward to meeting all of you. I've met a few of you. I look forward to meeting all the different groups that we have in the city, explain why I'm a better candidate. I've got, like I said, 25 years law enforcement. I'm advanced post-certified law enforcement, drug recognition expert, crisis intervention, child abuse investigator. I'm ready to work for the city now, or for the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. Rich?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, I'm here to just give you a little update on my buddy Izzy that we just had a softball tournament for. And I want to thank the mayor, I want to thank Henry Wade for their donations, I want to thank the council for being there. Staff, thank you very much for the donation of the fields, also PRL. They donated the fields to us, so we saved a lot of money, and I'm grateful for that because that's going to help them make another mortgage payment. For those of you who don't know, Izzy had a bad accident 2 years ago, and he's a correction officer, and he's been in the hospital. It happened up on our favorite road, 347 and Riggs Road, and unfortunately, he's in a coma, and he'll probably, unfortunately, never come out of it. But again, the city came together, and I want to thank everybody. And it's a list of really people here I want to thank. I want to thank both chiefs for sending out officers and firemen to come out there during the national anthem. It was awesome. It just shows how we all stick together here in Maricopa. I also want to thank Maricopa Auto, Home Depot, my good buddy Kelly Anderson, first mayor of Maricopa, if you don't know, Kevin McDill and Vanessa McDill, Jeremy Hunt from Hunt's Pest Control, Brooklyn Boys, and the biggest people I also want to thank is the city, the people of the city. They came out to donate. We raised $7,000 for my friend. I just want to thank everybody, and I want to thank all you guys for being there and supporting Christian throughout the first pitch, our mayor, and he threw a nice one. But again, thank you, and his family thanks you for everything that he has done, that you guys have done for him. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Rich. At this time, I don't have any additional speaker cards, but if there's something you wanted to tell the council, you're welcome to do so. I do have one more from Henry Wade. I apologize. But again, I'll still hold that true that after Mr. Wade is done, that you're all welcome to a few minutes if you so desire. Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor, City Council members. I come to you today to introduce to you your replacements. At this time, I'd like to, as part of my Councilman on the Corner, quarterly Councilman on the Corner events, this year, or this upcoming one, which will be May 19th from 9 to 10:30, we're going to concentrate on a mock city council process. We're going to go through a work session and an actual city council meeting as well. And the young people who are going to be doing this are Maricopa youth. So at this time, I'd like to introduce the mayor, Mayor Deanna Lamorin.
Mayor Price, Vice Mayor Chapados, Council and City Manager Sorensen. I would like to thank you to take this opportunity to introduce my council. Vice Mayor Curtis L. Brennan Jr., Councilmember Caden Pulliam, Councilmember Jovan Wade, Councilmember Bria B. Lee, Councilmember Selena Gibson Davis.
Have a seat.
All right.
Beautiful.
Mayor Price, Vice Mayor Chapados, Council, and City Manager Sorensen, I would like to take this time to introduce my staff. Devin Burton, City Clerk, Johanna Lamorin, City Attorney, Imani Fair, staff, Anaya Fair, staff.
We're missing one council member, that is Isabella Dolson. She is not here today, so she is the only one that is not available. So these members and the positions that they have, they actually voted. We had an election process that they went through. They selected the city manager, city attorney, city clerk, and they've gone through the entire election process. So looking forward to them on May 19th. They have a subject that they are going to introduce. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag on that. They're going to staff it, present it at work session, and then come back for a city council meeting to decide whether or not they'll move forward. Mr. Mayor, do you have anything you'd like to say, sir?
Good luck. You're going to need it. And I hope you're comfortable sitting in chairs. You're going to be there for a long time. No, great job. Congratulations, you guys.
So can we get a picture of you guys together? If I just stand up and get a little closer to each other.
You want us all to come down there?
Wow, that would be great.
Yeah, let's all go down there.
Someone left a phone up here. I'm not sure who it might belong to. That you? Oh, okay.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you, Maricopa.
Please, tell us your name for the record.
My name is Shirley Anderson, and I live at 36511 West Picasso Street here in Maricopa. I've been here for 11 years, and I am here wanting to talk briefly about a very important subject that I think we all are interested in. I moved here, as I said, 11 years ago from Tucson after living there 38 years. I have 3 wonderful sons, 7 wonderful grandchildren, and as of January, I ran into a very serious medical condition after the flu, and I came to the realization that I may very well need to downsize. I have a 3-bedroom home that I love and have loved for all these years, but I do see a severe necessity in the very near future of finding something, housing, apartment, condo, townhome, something that will accommodate my needs and also accommodate the rest of the community. I think it's a very important issue that a lot of seniors, like myself, will participate in and be interested in. I'm presently still working as a registered nurse for the Maricopa School District and love it, love my children that I have. And so I do need to find something other than moving to Chandler or Casa Grande or someplace else. I attended the Housing Committee meeting this afternoon, was very impressed with the work that they have been doing and have done so far. I'm encouraged and hope that I can hang on long enough that I can be able to utilize the facilities that they are so wonderfully talking about right now. I do also have one of my grandsons who is a senior at the high school, and he's working with the CAC college and has been participating in that program, which has been wonderful, but would kind of like to next year be on his own. That's not going to be possible here in Maricopa, and none of us want to leave. We love it, and I just wanted to let people know that as a senior citizen, as a group of people, we encourage and please promote the idea of housing and making the accommodations appropriate so that we don't have to leave our city that we love and the family that we love. Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council for allowing me this time to speak.
Thank you very much for coming and talking to us. Appreciate it. Anyone else at this time like to address the council? Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close the call to the public at this time and move on to the minutes. Council, before you are the minutes 7.1 and 7.2. If there's no objections, can we move to a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. That'll take us to item 8. Item 8 is a public hearing. Don't have these every week, but we do have them. This is 8.1 PH 18-02. The mayor and city council shall hear a public comment on a request to rezone to planned area development on approximately 776 acres generally located south of the intersection of Anderson Road and Maricopa Casa Grande Highway. And please take it away.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. So for anybody who may have interest in speaking on this item, the way that we're trying to structure this is so that all the information can be up front and you'll have the opportunity to address the council afterwards. So it's my pleasure. My name is Ryan Wozniak. I've been managing this case for some years now. It's the first planned area development from scratch that's come through our zoning code that we are exercising currently. So this has been a rather large undertaking, and speaking from staff's perspective, both planning, engineering, fire, police, it's certainly been an interesting go-around in trying to administer a new code, and we wanted to make sure that we were honoring all the policies and all the efforts that went into developing the planned area development article. And so I hope that what you hear tonight is a good reflection upon that. So this is really a multi-department effort. Planning is presenting Anderson Russell planned area development, but know that I'm speaking on behalf engineering, and fire and police. So this request, as the mayor kind of outlined already, 776 acres, generally south of Anderson Road, Maricopa Cascade Highway. And a planned area development is very complex, conceptual land use mix of things that happen. It's really meant to be kind of live on its own and be its own community, but then also integrate and dovetail with the community around it. The applicants are from Philip Miller Consulting, Kelly Hall, and also represented by Rose Law, Court Rich tonight. The council shall consider and take action. I'm sorry, the text was not updated. So this went through the Planning and Zoning Commission previously. So the zoning code, section 5100 required findings are all listed within the zoning code that we have. And there are 6 items that are listed as required findings. The red will indicate where the application or the proposal didn't quite meet all of the expectations that we would have liked to see come through. So 1, proposed development is consistent with the general plan, the subdivision ordinance, applicable specific plans or master plan, including density and intensity limitations that apply. So really this is indicated in red due to the fact that some general plan elements we felt were off the table. We can kind of get into those with future slides. We didn't have any trouble with seeing that it was physically suitable for this type of intensity of land being proposed. The adequate transportation facilities, well, that was a hang-up. Part of the application is a transportation impact analysis, and the city engineer did not find that the transportation impact analysis really went through a very comprehensive analysis. There was some things that were left off the table, maybe some things that were not really executed to the staff's likings, the engineer's likings. And then there's the public health and safety welfare issue, which we'll talk about. Item D, we didn't have any trouble. We thought that it met the statements really well. Item E, we felt that it suited pretty well. But then there was also item F. Planned area development provisions are met by providing a more efficient use of land and excellence of architecture and site design, greater than which could be achieved through the application of base zoning regulation districts, or the base district regulations. And this really comes into, okay, we're managing multiple land uses within one proposal, and how do those land uses interact, or what kind of details are we coming through with that? And when it comes to achieving a really well-designed mixed-use parcel, staff was hoping for more details to make it predictable. And this will, I'll put a pin in this, and if you want to come back to it, we can explore this in future to greater length. But this is really a question of how the code should be executed, and it's not prescribed in the code. There is a range of ways that we can administer the code between being very discretionary and very, very definitive. If we read the language of this code, we got the sense that we should err on the side of definitiveness, not discretion. So that's really kind of what helped lead staff through our administration process. And again, I'll put a pin on that. If you want to ask questions about that, we can explore that further. So site location. In yellow is the boundaries of the city, and down in the southeast corner we have Maricopa Cascade Highway that leads southeast to the very southeast portions of the city limits, where we find the site location of Anderson-Russell. So Anderson Road runs north-south from the connection. That's a major intersection that would serve the property. And then we get into the proposed land uses. Proposed land uses are diverse. That's a strength of the proposal. Another strength of the proposal is the number of acres that are dedicated to business and land use, business park, light industrial. So there are a number of things that are working well for the mix of land uses and diversity of land uses, and we don't want to take that away. If this came back to staff, staff would be happy to have the same robust mix of things happening. We'll get into some of the details. Mixed use regulations. There was some consternation as to how much of the first floor retail would be administered. Through stipulations, we've been able to remedy that the best that we can. We expect that 50% of the building footprints to exhibit that first floor retail and of the parcel G. And so that's something exciting. We can get excited about that. But then there was also a lot of details that staff had tried to pull from the application so that we have that embedded in the zoning, so that we have a predictable outcome of what the street sections would look like, what the circulation would look like. And so in the circulation plan, it was never updated to give us a real sense of how that on-street parking and that pedestrian-oriented design of the thoroughfare would complement those buildings. So that was one item that we pushed for. Another consideration is the Auction Airport. There is an approach surface that leads to the airport, and Auction was unsatisfied with the proximity of this. And to the applicant's credit, they had moved all the housing from the west side of Anderson Road to the east side of Anderson Road to try to accommodate Auction. They were still a little concerned as to the intensity of the residential uses that are then right up against Anderson Road, as that might have a conflict of interest as the airport tries to grow and all the noise that's generated from the airport. Then there was considerations as to infrastructure, and the roadways infrastructure as it crosses the railroad tracks, as it crosses the MSIDD or canals and other washes and things of that nature. So when it comes to the cost of infrastructure, there was some language within the narrative that staff has conditioned to strike from the narrative that would say that the city should incorporate CIP projects to really make this on city staff. But there's more to be considered as far as how much the city should be cooperation with this until we have a transportation impact analysis that will lay out those facts as to how much is in the onus of the development to be responsible for this widening and how much the city should participate. So until we have a transportation impact analysis, it's really hard to kind of thread that needle. As far as site conditions that also propose those challenges is the Santa Cruz Wash. There's 3, maybe more potential bridges that would need to be accommodated. The narrative did improve over time as to taking more ownership of that, but staff still sees that with master plan communities of this size, it really is incumbent upon the community to burden the costs of this type of infrastructure. And we want to just put it on the record to make sure that we're clear here in the public hearing that staff would stand firm into allocating those costs onto the development as much as their allocable share designates. And again, that would be clarified through a transportation impact analysis, which we do not have to the city's engineers' satisfaction at this point. Other site conditions, to the applicant's credit, they were participants in the regional transportation studies and the planning efforts that came about with Val Vista Road, which is an important regional thoroughfare. And so we'll need to see that Val Vista Parkway is acknowledged in any sort of intersections that might intersect with Teal Road and Val Vista Parkway in the future as transportation impact analyses are buttoned up and completed. And then so with Val Vista Road, we anticipate as best we can at this point that Val Vista Road's right-of-way would not encumber this property, but in the event that things change and as engineering records come into fruition, as this is potentially approved and runs into a plating process, that we would be looking for right-of-way designed and accommodated for in the event that Val Vista Parkway does need right-of-way dedication. Maricopa Fire and Medical Department, John Storm wrote a nice memo that kind of illustrates the lack of ability to respond in an adequate, meaningful way for the property, given the existing locations of fire stations. And so kind of highlighted in yellow are generally the routes that it would take to get the primary route access and secondary route access to the site. And those minutes are on the screen for you. At 12 minutes and 24 minutes of routes, there was never really support from fire departments as to say that they felt like they were in a good position to serve the property currently. Maricopa Police Department also had similar concerns as far as access for emergency response. And then I should just highlight, for the sake of Chief Stahl, who I know is looking at me back there, that the police department operates differently than the fire department. He wanted to make sure that we talk about the fact that his men are never stationed. A police station in this location would not resolve the police department's concerns because they're always circulating throughout the city, right? And so its dispersal of developments causes a specific challenge to the police department. So site conditions, the floodplain, although in the firm map shows that not much of the property is impacted by the floodplain, I did want to highlight the fact that the Pinal County Floodplain Administrator noted that the existing levees protecting the site are not adequate for construction of new buildings, and then a master floodplain solution would be required as part of the pre-plat. This isn't one of those major sticking points. We feel like this can be resolved through subdivision process. Highlighted in yellow is the only parcel that was proposed for development that is immediately impacted by the firm maps. Okay, so the general plan. It asks us to minimize conflicts and coordinate land uses, managing and planning activities with neighboring communities and stakeholders. And so as part of our reach out, this is a list of all the stakeholders that we notified and had involved in the process at some point in the game. And so Ak-Chin Airport was very active, Union Pacific Railroad to some degree, the MSIDD folks, Casa Grande through transportation issues, Pinal County for floodplain administration. State land surrounds that kind of middle finger piece of the proposal. So we had state land involved. The school district has the support letter on file. Utilities have will serve letters. There's quite an extensive amount of utilities that would be run to the property, though, in order to make it to serve the property, which is another challenge that we want to make sure is on the record for being the burden of the development. And then private ownership within 300 feet were notified for public or for the neighborhood meetings. All right, we'll move along through all the elements of the general plan kind of quickly. I know that this was all highlighted in the staff report. Goal E2, developing a safe city network. And so one of the things that we come across in the review is that this one-way circulation around the Central Park and the school site that were allocated was one of those highlighted things that we wanted to make sure were on record for. If this were approved in the pre-plat process, we would want to see a different circulation plan around the park and the school. Given the amount of volume that would be coming through the area, we feel that it would be best if it had a bypass route that did not encumber the school and the park site so immediately. And so that was one of those proposals that we never saw resolved, and we thought that that would be one of those kind of issues that we could have resolved through this planned area development conceptual design. And especially with regards to when we took this through Parks, Rec, and Library, they also gave us a thumbs up, safe routes to school being of interest, and also the safety around the park. So transportation impact analysis, where we went wrong? Well, right off the bat, the city engineer wanted to make sure that we noted that this TIA that came through as part of the planned area development review is not being accepted if you decide to approve this tonight. What that means is that when it comes through in the pre-plat and subsequent reviews, we would need to see the transportation impact analysis revised per the deficiencies that were noted as part of our reviews. What that does for the starting process of our pre-plat review is it starts us off on the wrong foot, though. We should have this resolved kind of at least conceptually at the planned area development so that we have a strong start at our beginning preliminary engineered documents. And so this is kind of a disappointment in this review process. So highlighted below are a few of the intersections that or some of the concerns that came through that transportation impact analysis. Primarily being phasing. We know that the city has seen developments that come through with a phasing plan that are hard to administer because the phasing, every phase needs to kind of work on its own as it's built out. And so if we think that that's possible, but a transportation impact analysis that really considers that phasing plan and the scenarios that could play out through that phased development are important so that we make sure that we're hitting all the right notes there. A phasing plan with 2 points of access, kind of already highlighted, is important. Through our discussions, we never came to quite a resolution as to how to make sure that 2 points of access would be maintained to the satisfaction of the fire department. And so this is just a quick exhibit as to one of those unresolved issues as to the red was one of the things that were proposed. The purple was, well, maybe could there be additional right-of-way that would be found ways to access Anderson Road outside of development to serve as another point of access. Also, one thing that was not quite accurate about this exhibit is that Teal Road does exist on their property. It was kind of shown to be to the south of the property. It truly exists. There's right-of-way allocations at the southern border of the property, of the boundary. So we realize that does come in conflict with some of the Santa Cruz wash, but it was never discussed as to the formal process as to how to move that right-of-way and how to best serve the property. From a Parks, Rec, and Open Space, we want to make sure that we give a thumbs up here. For the most part, the allocation of preserved open space and using the wash, creating a trail network, and also, for the most part, honoring the planned trail along Maricopa Casa Grande Highway was adhered to. Just highlighted in red is one of those conditions of approval, if you so choose to approve tonight, would be an additional trail extension to make sure that we're continuing that trail along Maricopa Casa Grande Highway. The public buildings and facility element of the general plan is one of those sticky points. Highlighted here, especially after a day where I know budget talks were a topic of discussion. As staff, we were doing our best to uphold and safeguard the city's liabilities as far as ensuring that new development provides the resources to establish the infrastructure and services needed to serve that development, and the level of commitment and the details that were found in the narrative gave us pause, and so that was one of those hanging elements that was highlighted in red of those required findings by staff's estimation and upheld by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So, you heard a lot of different points of analysis tonight, and to try to give you some just basic conceptual buckets to kind of put these into, I noted that there's a few things that can be resolved later in a different design process, another step down the road, if this planned area development is approved. Those really easy ones are kind of highlighted in the green. The ones that are a little tricky, but probably very are feasible, if not probable, or slam dunks, are listed in black. And then red were really sort of the sticky points, right? They're not really having a very good conceptual secondary route access or conceptual plan for emergency services and access to the site. And so that was always a sticky point with our emergency services provider. Short on providing resources to establish the services needed to serve the development, given the amount of infrastructure costs and the asks in the narrative as to the city's participation in CIP projects, really try to make sure that we update our development impact fees for something specific on the site. Some of those are doable, but without a transportation impact analysis, we just did not know how much we were necessarily committing to. And then so design details remaining uncommitted, and the mixed use, highly densified portion of the project also are one of those things. As you get into things that are beyond single family homes, we really wanted to make sure that we nailed down a lot of design criteria for that mixed use so that the pedestrian realm and the circulation throughout that parcel was better envisioned and more definitive and more predictable. And we never really got the details that we wanted out of this process in order to get there. So those were kind of the sticky points. And I already kind of highlighted that the potentially infrastructure intensive elements are there. Inadequate commitments is really kind of the core of the recommendation tonight. If we had more if we were more on the definitive side of the spectrum with regards to planned area development commitments, the difference tonight the difference as staff approach Planning and Zoning Commission and the recommendation that comes out of Planning and Zoning Commission may have changed. But costs, also another element. So we've talked a fair amount about transportation impact analyses. Another different kind of objective measure was the fiscal impact analysis. And there was a fiscal impact analysis that was done as part of the annexation process back in 2013. And we approached the applicant as to, hey, to help us objectively wrangle some of these sticky points, maybe updating the fiscal impact analysis would be prudent, but that was a turned-down opportunity as well. We already talked a little bit about response times. In the attachments, you saw that an ISO rating and response times were highlighted in a memo from Assistant Chief John Storm. And so what we wanted to highlight in his memo was that the prospect of losing points out of the ISO rating could almost assuredly reduce the city's ISO rating and would have an effect on all of Maricopa residents and business owners as far as their potential level of risk that's measured by the ISO rating. So in conclusion, the required findings that I wanted to highlight here at the end that we heard from the Planning and Zoning Commission, that staff brought to the Planning and Zoning Commission, that were affirmed through some of the BCCs that we took this process through, is that we were not confident that we could find that this proposal will not be a detriment to public health, safety, and welfare. And we could not conclusively find that this was upholding Planning Maricopa, our general plan elements, specifically the elements of growth strategy, circulation and connectivity, and public services. So with that, Planning and Zoning Commission concurred with staff's findings that PAD 1604, proposal of Anderson Russell planned area redevelopment, to be insufficient in the required findings of the zoning code per the details of the staff's analysis. Based on the lack of required findings, Planning and Zoning Commission recommends denial of PAD 1604 Anderson Russell planned area development as proposed. But seeing that you are the decision-making body, we wanted to make sure that we gave you options tonight and back up with a list of stipulations that we feel that we can fall back on if you so choose to help safeguard the city. Stipulations of approval have been provided to you in the form of the staff report and the ordinance that you may act on tonight. And with that, I'll pause. We can get to questions later, and I'll let the applicant.
Yeah, so Court, I guess I would ask you if you want to go now, or would you like to wait till the item and we can just allow this part. This is the public hearing portion, so allow the public to comment if they so choose. If not, then we can close the public hearing, go through the agenda, get to item 10.3, and you can speak there or you can speak here, whichever you prefer.
Mayor, council members, certainly if you have a preference, I'll do that. I guess it might be useful to hear what else is said and then be able to respond as long as I can have that opportunity later.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, I think it might be beneficial to, again, let the public speak if they so desire. If not, close that and then move to the item, at which point we'll start with you because we've been presented the staff side at this point.
Thank you.
So again, this is a public hearing. This is the opportunity for anyone that wishes to approach the council and talk to this item and this item only. You may do so. We look forward to hearing from you. If not, then no worries. It's up to you. Public hearing is open. Okay, seeing no one approaching the podium here, we shall go ahead and close the public hearing at this time, and that will take us through the process of 8.1, and we will come back to it at item 10.3 in the regular City Council agenda. Council, that takes us to item 9, which is the consent agenda, which is item 9.1 through 9.4. We didn't have any discussion on that in the work session, so with that, can I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, yes.
9.5.
Oh, my apologies, 9.5. So consent being 9.1 to 9.5. My apologies, thank you, City Clerk. Would you amend your motion or remake your motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda 9.1 through 9.5.
And there's a second on that. So Council 9.1 to 9.5, any further discussion on the item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Sorry, just a second. Sorry about that, I was catching up on something. That takes us to the regular city council agenda. So this is item 10.1. The mayor and city council will discuss and possibly take action on making appointments to the Age-Friendly Maricopa Advisory Committee. This is for discussion and action. I believe that this is the part of filling the Maricopa Advisory, Age-Friendly Maricopa Advisory Committee. There are a couple of vacancies. I have one, and Vice Mayor Chapados has one. So at this time, I'd like to move or motion that we approve Ms. Joan Kozier to the Age-Friendly Maricopa Advisory Committee. So, and we can do this as a slate, so we don't have to do that. So my selection would be Joan Kozier. All right? And then Vice Mayor?
Mayor, my nomination would be Colleen Strom to the Age-Friendly Committee.
Colleen Strom. Perfect. Joan or Colleen, are you here tonight? Don't see you. Okay. With that, that is the slate that has been moved on this, or at least proposed. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second? And a second from Councilmember Smith. Any further discussion on these two? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 10.2, the mayor and council shall discuss possible take action to approve the addendum to the 2017-2019 Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, with the Professional Firefighters of Maricopa, or IAFF, Local 4561. This is for discussion and action. Kathleen?
Mayor and Council, as you recall, the city completed a classification and compensation study back in November of 2017. That was several months after the City and Firefighters Union had completed their MOU negotiations. So the fire union was given the opportunity to reopen the MOU for the sole purpose of discussing the impact of the class and comp study on the salary ranges for firefighter, fire engineer, and fire captain. The City of Maricopa management team met with the local International Association of Firefighters beginning in February through April of this year to negotiate an addendum to the current two-year agreement, which is reflective of the findings from the class and comp study. We're here today to submit to council this addendum to the MOU, which would also extend the term of the MOU by 1 year. I can answer any questions you may have.
Council, questions at this time concerning this? Pretty straightforward. Yes, Vice Mayor. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Proceed.
I move to approve the first addendum to the IAFF MOU.
So we have an addendum motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. That takes us to item 10.3. So this is ordinance 18-01, an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Maricopa, Arizona, approving and adopting an amendment to the city's zoning map to zone certain property described in zoning case PAD 16-04 for approximately 776 acres, generally situated south of the Maricopa-Casa Grande Highway between Anderson Road and Russell Road within the city of Maricopa incorporated limits. The parcel of land is situated in a portion of sections 15, 22, 23, and 26 of Township 5 South, Range 4 east of the Gila and Salt River Base and Meridian, Pinal County, Arizona. This is for discussion and action. We've just been through the staff portion, so with that, we didn't have any public comment. So I will turn the time over to you, Court.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. I have a presentation that'll pop up. Great. For your records, my name is Court Rich from the Rose Law Group. I'm representing the applicant in this case. Mr. Chase Emerson, who's here, is the owner of the property. And I think Kelly Hall, who's one of the representatives, is in the back as well. First of all, I do want to thank Ryan. You saw by the length of that presentation that obviously this has been a long and a project that has involved a lot of different elements. And I think many of you up there, I think maybe even a majority of you, 4 of you, have voted probably on this project at least 2 or 3 times in the past already. And so I want to talk a little bit about the history of how we got here. And then I can go through some of the responses to what Ryan pointed out. So here obviously is your general plan map, and you'll see the property there on the kind of bottom right side, surrounded in orange. This point in the process that we're at right now, we're at the zoning process, the rezoning. But this started back with an annexation back in 2012, when this property, you may recall, and again, many of you were on the council at that time, the city of Maricopa attempted to annex to the west. And for better or worse, that annexation did not end up being as robust as the city had hoped. and you ran into some roadblocks there. When that failed, or when most of it failed, the city actually approached Mr. Emerson and his fellow owners of this property and said, gosh, we realize that this is our only way to get to the south. And at that point in time, the city said, we really like it if you would come into the city, because it will preserve this annexation route for us in the future. And in a couple of slides, I've got a little more detail on this, but that was the annexation phase. The council voted unanimously, Mr. Mayor, you were on the council at the time, to annex this property. At that time, there was also a development agreement that was entered into. This was the second phase of the development process. That development agreement covered a portion of the property and said, if you come into the city of Maricopa, we want you to do that. We believe it's beneficial to everyone. And then you can develop this site as a mix of uses. Some of it will be office and commercial, and some of it will be different densities of residential. So that was the next step, and we're getting more specific as to what's going to happen. Then we came through in 2013, and we did a general plan amendment. And that general plan amendment took this property and designated it as a future master plan community with all the mixes of uses and the concepts that we've got presented to you today. So that was the next step in the process. Now we're at the PAD step in the process. After that, we'll be back. We'll be here for preliminary plat approval, for final plat approval, for improvement plans, and the process goes on. And so I just wanted to put that in perspective. And here is the map. Here's your city boundaries today. This is what the city of Maricopa looks like. It's about 44 square miles. And here is from your general plan, your future planning area. And if you add that all up, you're looking at like 233 square miles. Will the city of Maricopa ever be that big? I don't know, but it can't be that big if you can't annex into that area. And I think that's what the city recognized back in 2011 when they approached Mr. Emerson and everyone worked together to achieve this annexation, to move forward with this community. And so here's that annexation route in the future. So enough about kind of the history and how we got here, but let's look at this site and why it works for development, why it's the right place, and what good things it brings to the city. So it's just over 5 miles as the crow flies to City Hall. And by perspective, for comparison, to Cobblestone Farms is just over 3 miles. So we're not talking some far-flung development in the middle of nowhere. This is really right in what will be the core, certainly, of the future of the city of Maricopa, and it's not all that far away even from where we stand right here today. It's perfectly located on the transportation infrastructure in the city and throughout the county with great access to Highway 238, to the Maricopa-Casa Grande Highway. That's going to allow people from this area to easily get in and go either direction and get out. More importantly, as you'll see, we've proposed to add lots of jobs and job-making opportunities to this site. And this location with the infrastructure is perfect for that. You saw a slide earlier that Mr. I think it was Ryan earlier was talking about the future Val Vista corridor that is going to be funded as a result of the initiative that was just passed in the last election, and that sales tax will allow for an overpass to be built there. Currently, it's planned to be almost immediately adjacent to the east of this property, which will provide fantastic future access to this site. And again, it's the only way to get south. So earlier today, and I know a lot of the people in the audience weren't here during the study session, but I think it sort of foreshadowed what I was going to tell you today. I didn't make this after that. I made this before, but you had some presentations from folks that were looking at what is best for economic development for the city of Maricopa. And I think one of the things I wrote down is they said they wanted to create an environment where jobs can be created. And I think after I get done talking to you about this, hopefully you can see this is one of those environments that's perfect for that. So there's over 100 acres of ideally located business park, 30 acres of commercial, and let me show you on the map here. Right up along Maricopa-Casa Grande Highway is the business park there in blue. The commercial is in red, and then there's various mixed-use parcels as well. The other thing that you heard during your presentation during your study session today was about this idea that you want to have live, work, play environments. And that you've got a lot of inquiries, and we even had a public comment tonight about multifamily housing and those kind of options. Well, this will be, I believe, the first development in Maricopa to come here and present all of those things to you in one development. You have the commercial, the retail that will serve the residential. You have different densities of residential. You have multifamily. You have apartments. You have all of that along with these job uses. So these diverse housing options, again, that the proposal or the presentation you got earlier today was regarding your Maricopa Housing Needs Assessment Report. And one of the things they singled out is we need places that have different types of residences, whether it be multifamily or attached housing, those kind of things. And that's what is baked into this proposal and will be delivered when this is delivered. So we also, the owner felt it was very important to have a design that was going to be unique and attractive and welcoming and a good thing for the future of the city. And they hired what they believe to be one of the best land planners in the state of Arizona, in Gree Pickett, to come up with this land plan that they're implementing here. So we believe it's a great community design. It preserves this annexation corridor. There's substantial open space as part of this. We meet all of the requirements of the Maricopa open space ordinance, and we exceed them in many respects. They feel very proud of that, and I think you even heard from Ryan that was something that everyone agrees is good. There's a school site, so when we talk about that live, work, play, educate, everything can happen there. We have an agreement with the school districts already. We are providing a dedicated fire station site as well that would be giving it to the fire department, and I'll talk certainly more about public safety in just a moment. So I think I wanted to touch on the Planning Commission meeting that we had, and there was confusion at that meeting. And the confusion mostly centered around the stipulations that are part of this package. And I wanted to talk about stipulations really quickly. And I think the opportunity at that meeting was somewhat lost. I know there were questions that were asked of staff by the planning commissioners, but unfortunately they weren't asked to the city attorney's office. And so I think you were getting some staffers giving sort of legal opinions that maybe weren't, well, I think they caused some confusion, and that's fine. But I want to help sort some of that out. So stipulations are common in just about every zoning case you're ever going to see, certainly in a planned area development zoning case. And the point of these stipulations is to protect the city while preparing and providing clear direction to the applicant of what they need to accomplish, what they need to get done before they can fully develop their property. It sets expectations. And I think the key confusion that happened at the Planning and Zoning Commission was that there was some doubt about the enforceability of stipulations. And I mean, they're allowed by law in the state of Arizona. Certainly I'm not your lawyer, but you can ask your lawyer about his opinion about the enforceability of stipulations. But there is just no doubt zoning in Arizona involves stipulations on just about every case. So with that uncertainty and sort of misunderstanding in mind, I know Mr. Fitzgibbons contacted my office and said, hey, would you be amenable to going a step further and actually making sure that, if there's for some reason a confusion or discomfort with stipulations, that we take those stipulations and we actually put them into the zoning ordinance that the council approves. And so this was not something that was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but something afterwards that Mr. Fitzgibbons came up with, I believe, to help make everyone feel even more comfortable about the enforceability of these things if there was any question about it. So we've agreed, and I think you have a draft ordinance in front of you that takes all of those stipulations and places them directly into the zoning ordinance itself. And so that will be the zoning code on this piece of property when this is approved. And that should relieve all doubts about enforceability. And so I think then the important thing just becomes, what do they say so that you feel comfortable that they say the right thing? A few of the issues that were mentioned earlier that I anticipated that would be talked about, the Union Pacific Railway. So there is, in this development process that we're in, the developer needs to go through the entitlement process to be able to solve problems, right? Every development has issues that need to be solved, whether it's water and sewer or it's roadways or whatever it might be. They need to solve these problems. But to go through the process is what gives them the motivation to go and solve the problem. So with Union Pacific, we think there are multiple ways to potentially expand the access and make this work. That you can expand to Anderson Road, the future Val Vista overpass that is going to be immediately adjacent to this site is another possibility. And so we went out and we met with Union Pacific, and we've met with them on 3 different occasions. And we said, can you work with us now before we have zoning to try to settle this issue and figure out what we're going to do going forward? And we got a letter from them earlier this year, and I'll pull out some quotes here. It says, after you have your zoning in place, the developer and city can better study the traffic needs for the development, and that is the appropriate time for us to engage in more detailed discussions about this matter. Thanks again for keeping us up to date, and we look forward to more detailed discussions as the development proceeds through the more detailed platting process. So what this says to us as the developer is not only from our perspective, from their perspective, is the right time to solve this problem once you've got your zoning in place and you're going through the more technical and detailed platting process, but even Union Pacific Railway doesn't want to engage in the discussion until they know that the project is moved forward further in the development process. So in order to do that and to protect the city, there are a number of stipulations that are placed now into the ordinance that protect you, make us go and get these approvals from Union Pacific before we come back for the preliminary plat. And so those are enforceable against us. If we don't have those approvals in place, they won't be able to get their preliminary plat and move forward until they do. The other issue, certainly that's been talked about, public safety / access to the property. And certainly that's important. One of the things that Mr. Emerson did after having discussions with your staff and your planning commission is we agreed what's really unprecedented, and I mean that just because I've never seen it before, that in addition to any of the impact fees that are charged on the property, they've agreed, and now this is in the ordinance itself, that they'll give $200 per residential dwelling unit extra to go towards public safety. So I assume that you will all update your impact fees between now and the time they develop, and that will likely increase the cost they have to pay for different elements. But even so, they're going to give this money up and above on top of that to help the city with this, with these issues. The stipulations are really clear that on the access, this question of will the response times be right? Are there the right 2 points of access to the property in the future? The stipulations require fire and police review, and approval is at their discretion. And that's the language that's right in the ordinance. And again, that then gives the developer the time to go out and solve the problem through engineering while protecting the city, knowing that they can't move forward without your approval. And they're donating that fire station site, which I mentioned earlier. So I'll point you just in the ordinance in front of you, one of the stipulations that's important on this point is C little Roman numeral 5 that talks about 2 points of access to each phase to the satisfaction of the police department and Maricopa Fire and Medical Department, which approval shall be in writing and at the city's discretion. Couldn't be much clearer than that. That means that they can't move forward. They have to get this at pre-plat. So this isn't, they haven't cleared the land, they're building homes, and you won't let them move in. This is before they can even finish their engineering. They have to get this approval. Let me just address a couple of the things that Ryan mentioned also with regard to the findings before I wrap up. He had talked about the required findings that are in your zoning ordinance, and one of them is he said that staff had trouble finding that this is consistent with the general plan and the subdivision ordinance. Well, it's absolutely consistent with the general plan. We changed the general plan to the designation that allows this use specifically. That's what we're proposing. And with regard to the subdivision ordinance, we're required by law to follow the subdivision ordinance. We can't follow it today. I mean, we can't because we're not at the pre-plat portion of the development process, and that's when we're committed to and have to, by law, follow the subdivision ordinance. There's no way we can develop without following it. With regard to transportation facilities, it was mentioned that they didn't feel that we were providing adequate transportation facilities. But if you looked at the language of the finding that was required, it said there are either adequate transportation facilities in place or they will be provided. And that's exactly what the stipulations that are now in the ordinance require us to do. And frankly, that's what every development does, is they have to promise that, then they go through the platting process. Then there was the contention that this use of land with the PAD isn't better or more advantageous than without the PAD. And that one I frankly just don't understand. Without a PAD, you're looking at lot splits with no unified planning. With the PAD, you're looking at all these mixed uses, the apartment uses, the office uses, the business uses, the different densities, all this stuff that you can't get without the PAD. And because the transportation impact analysis was mentioned, I want to touch on, early on in this process, staff made it very clear to us that the TIA, as it's called, cannot be approved at the zoning phase. It only becomes final at preliminary plat. And so all this discussion about them not approving our transportation impact analysis today really doesn't mean anything, because as you go through the engineering process, it always changes. It has to by definition, and it always gets finally approved at the preliminary plat stage. That's absolutely how it works, and that's what we're committed to doing. There was a comment about the interior circulation. I wish Ryan had mentioned that we agreed in a stipulation that we're going to alter that and change it, and the staff has to approve it. So there were those kind of things. But there are a lot of moving parts with this, and so I certainly understand the challenge in explaining it there. So just to sum up, if we get this approval in place and we take this next step in the development process that started 5 or 6 years ago now, the city is protected. That's what this ordinance does. That's what these stipulations do. It protects the city. It allows the owner the ability to move forward with this phase in hand, to then have the confidence that they should go solve these problems, because they don't want to go solve them and then come back and have you deny their zoning. They need to get to this phase to go and solve some of these issues that have been raised. And they place all the risk, whether Mr. Emerson wants it or not, all the risk is on him at the end of the day to go solve these problems, or he can't do this development plan. It preserves the annexation corridor, and it continues this process that you all started many years ago. So I hope that wasn't too long, but I appreciate the opportunity to kind of tell you the good stuff about this project and how I think it's going to play a great role in the future of Maricopa. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Court. Council, you've heard both sides of the story, so to speak. What questions do you have? Turn the time to you. We'll start with Councilmember Smith.
I don't have questions. I have probably discussion items.
Okay.
Do you want that at this point?
Sure. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I want to talk first about, well, first of all, let me say, because this is a very complicated topic, and you're right, it's been before council several times, and I know that our city staff work very hard on it, and they have very good intentions, and put a lot of information forward to the P&Z, and then now to city council, and I know that the applicant has worked very hard on it over the many times that it's been presented to P&Z and at the city. So I congratulate both organizations for doing a really good job. I sat through the P&Z discussion. I went intentionally to listen to this topic because of my own conversations with staff. I wanted to hear more about what the P&Z was thinking, what the applicant had to say, and also our staff and their presentation. And I want to talk a little bit about, because I think you should find it concerning, right, that P&Z requested a denial. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, just to give you a perspective of what happened at the P&Z. And so let me go through a couple of things. They got very, very hung up on the response times. And of course, if you lived in a neighborhood and you saw that your response time on entry point 2 was 28 minutes, you'd get hung up on it too. But what they were missing by getting hung up on the response times, they're trying to care for our community, is that they weren't, I don't feel like they heard or understood the stipulations and how the applicant was going to work to reduce response times, to provide that information to police chief and to fire chief, and that it required their approval. And they were just really concerned about protecting the community. And that was their goal, and it was a really good intention, but they were missing the piece of the stipulations and how the city was protected. Regarding the grade separation, the applicant did show the letter that they received from UP, and a really great conversation centered around the letter. And I want to kind of, I can't quote it perfectly, but Commissioner Irving said, to me, he said it in 4 words, this is like a catch-22. If Union Pacific is not going to talk to them until they get their rezoning, and the city, the P&Z doesn't issue the rezoning or doesn't support the rezoning, how do they move on? And I wanted to stand up and go, yes, that's absolutely right. It's a catch-22. How do we allow the applicant to move on? Because we have UP actually telling them, we'll talk to you more, we want to work with you, we'll talk with you more when you get the rezoning approved. And then Commissioner Marsh, who's in the audience, had some really good things to say. He was able to see and define to P&Z how the stipulations would cover the city. But again, the rest of the P&Z was really, really concerned about response time, and I completely understand that, and couldn't really get their arms around the stipulations. And so I commend Commissioner Marsh for being able to see that there was a workaround, that there was a way to work around that. So at this point, what I'd like to do, because I've put a lot of emphasis on the stipulations, is to ask our legal team, Dennis. We know we've heard from the applicant that these stipulations protect the city on the issues that our staff has, and they're very good issues. And so I want to hear from you on your belief of the power of those stipulations.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Smith, I think where this came from, the idea was that I had heard, because Tina Benucci was at P&Z, and so we were talking about some of their concerns. And so one of the things we thought we could do is, some cities do put all the stipulations in the ordinances, other cities don't. We thought on this situation it might be a good thing, because in the ordinance would be reported with the county reporter's office, and maybe in searching with regards to property, this ordinance would come up. They would be able to see what the exact stipulations are going to be. As in anything, obviously, there's going to be parts of it that still need to be worked through, and I think Court was trying to explain that, such as the stipulation on access. And he went to that stipulation, which is on, I think, page 2 of the ordinance, and it specifically talks about 2 points of access to each phase to the satisfaction of the Police Department, Maricopa Fire and Medical Department, which approval shall be in writing in the city's discretion. We're trying to eliminate any confusion there. We're trying to say you're going to still need to work with the police department, fire department, and when they're satisfied with the access, we're going to have something in writing that says they're satisfied with the access. Now, we're going to work toward that. Does that mean all the problems are wiped away? I can't anticipate what might come up in the future, but what we're trying to do there is saying that both police and fire will actually sign something that says we're okay with this access. And it's a tough access. If anybody watched where this property is located, Maricopa, Casa Grande, it's great access as long as the train's not coming by. No problems. But if there's a train stopped on the tracks there, it's that secondary access that we're so concerned about, especially early on. Once the overpass is built and potentially the east-west corridor is built, that helps us greatly down there. But right now, as it sits today, it can create some problems.
So if I understand what you're saying, the power of the ordinance and the stipulations are such that using response time and second point of access as an example, if the applicant is not able to satisfy both of our chiefs, then really it's a matter of either having to work that out or we come to a standstill at that point.
Right. And I think Court would agree with that. He knows that's a big concern, and his client knows that's a big concern. But we all, I think, have to be reasonable trying to work toward what's going to be satisfactory. And, the hope is once the development is more fully developed, there's a fire station there that would be close by that would provide immediate access. That fire station doesn't exist today, but no houses exist down there either. But
Right.
during construction, that's a concern for us. And trying to make sure we're able to get there in a timely manner will be a concern for the city.
Right. And, you know, we don't necessarily at this point know the timing of this project and what all could change between now and that point and what options that provides to you in regards to the changes that occur around it. So, you know, after listening and sitting through the P&Z, after hearing more from the applicant, after hearing what the legal had to offer, at this point, and going back to those words from Commissioner Irving, it's a catch-22. I feel, and knowing that the annexation is important to our city, at this point, given that legal indicates that the stipulations are enforceable, you know, and I take seriously the concerns of the city, I believe we should support this request and trust in our processes and the ordinance that we're putting forth and approve this. And I know there's more conversation, but I'd like to make a motion when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. We'll come back to you when that time is ready. Councilmember Wade.
Did you get the answer to your question? Because
Yes, I feel like I did.
What I'm saying is the enforcement of the stipulations, are you satisfied that there's enough legal power for the stipulations to survive any other issues that might come about in the future? Will those stipulations hold?
Well, I mean, Mayor, Councilmember Wade, I mean, I think staff has done a good job trying to put together all these stipulations. We tweaked them a little bit in the ordinance, but it's tough to predict what might come up, what the potential issues are that might arise. I think with what we have as we sit here tonight, I think we believe that we have solid stipulations, but does that mean there might be debate over what some of them might mean? That can happen. And that's why I think we're trying to say that we don't want any confusion that somebody believed Chief Leffler said that the access was right. We want to make sure it's in writing. We want to make sure that it's in their discretion, that it can be. But it's, it has to still be a reasonable discretion. It still has to be within reason.
My only concern is being overpowered by another power, and I'm specifically concerned about the railroad and whether or not we will be able to initiate a change or initiate the action to be able to have them change if necessary, or to accommodate the process if necessary. That's the concern that I have.
Well, and I think that's a good concern to have, but I think it's also the applicant's primary concern. I mean, they're the ones that are going to have to deal with UP, Union Pacific Railroad. We're going to be there for what the city can do, but obviously they're going to have to do the heavy lifting on that part of it. I don't think that's not the city's responsibility, and I think court understands that, and his client understands that, and they've taken the first step in reaching out to UPRR, and so that's where we are.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Court, during your presentation, you said that concern over the internal parcel with the one-way transportation has been addressed, but you didn't expand on how. Well, how have you changed that?
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor. Let me find the stipulation, and I can point it to you. We agreed to revise the internal circulation through one of these stipulations here.
Are you proposing that you're going to change it from a one-way only access to two-way, or?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, part of the stipulations require our traffic impact analysis to be approved at the preliminary plat phase, and we've committed to revising the internal circulations to your staff's satisfaction. They need to approve the transportation impact analysis, and so I couldn't tell you exactly how that will work. We understand the city and the staff doesn't like the one-way thing. We thought there were some good attributes of it. We thought it was a unique design that would create actually a safer atmosphere, but we understand we have a disagreement with your transportation department, and that's fine, so we're going to revise that. I would not expect that they would ever approve us with that one-way design in the future.
And then the other issue has to do with the points of access, but right now just focusing on off of MCG Highway. I think it's more than just access over the railroad tracks. You're going to have, and hopefully the traffic TIA will answer this question, the increased volume, the two-way turns, accessing in and out of your parcel onto a major highway, the intersection at Murphy, all of that stuff, is that all going to be part of the TIA?
It is, yes.
Other questions, council? You know, I would also echo some of the comments that have been made today. I mean, this is a challenging issue. I know the applicant has been along for a very long ride as we've gone through a lot of changes here for a variety of different reasons, new zoning codes and everything else. But, you know, at the end of the day, this is about a zoning change, really, and you know, the start of this PAD, putting this into ordinance, making sure the stipulations are followed. I would never minimize in any way, shape, or form the questions, concerns, you know, theories that our staff puts forward in their professional ability to, you know, protect the city. But I think at the same time, you know, I like what it says here, Court. I mean, it places the risk on the owner. And so, you know, to that end, that's what we're transferring. We're transferring this risk from us to them so that at the end of the day, this issue is theirs. They have to work out stuff with UPR. They have to work out the satisfaction of routes and turns and all these other things. And so, you know, that's what we're doing, is we're allowing a business owner to move forward with conducting a business, whereas right now they've been stuck in a limbo for the last 6 years. And I think that goes against the whole purpose and reason we annexed. Right? I mean, if we're trying to be business friendly here, then that's what this is about. It's trying to find ways to get to yes. It's trying to find ways to say, yes, we understand there's risk. There's always going to be something that's unexpected, but we're trying in good faith with both negotiated parties to say, these are the ways in which you solve a problem. And yet, at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that aren't solved in it, right? But that's not what we're at today. We're not at the point of solving all these problems today. That's their issue when they get to it, as they come back to us in the future. Our issue today is does it meet the zoning ability, putting it into the ordinance to decide and determine, can we give the applicant the ability to move forward and break this chicken or the egg scenario? Because that's where we're at. And so, you know, that's how I see this. I see this as the fact that we are trying to move the city forward. We're trying to find a way in which we can be business friendly, we can address these concerns, we're putting them into an ordinance. I mean, we're solidifying this thing as best we possibly can. And like I said, in good faith, trying to think of all the potential outcomes that can happen here, while still simultaneously the applicant has agreed to say, we understand that your staff has to sign off on this before we can move forward on all these other things. There's nothing but farm there at the moment. I mean, honestly, and that's not the way it'll stay. I mean, clearly the applicant doesn't make money by it staying a farm forever, but at the same time, that's what we're dealing with. So, you know, there's a 28-minute response time if there's a train sitting on the tracks, yet the overpass will be built before then. So what's the purpose of it stopping anymore, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that it'll never have a reason, but again, it eliminates that issue. I mean, we're talking about an overpass being built in the next 18 months. I'm not sure the applicant is going to have water and sewer there in the next 2 years, you know, much less 5 years. I don't know, maybe you can surprise me, but my point is that there's a lot of work to be done. And our job here today is to look and see, does this merit zoning change, sticking in ordinance, putting in the stipulations, and justifying the ability to move forward as a business? And that's kind of how I see this. So again, I think if we were taking on risk, that I would be concerned, but I think that we've tried to transfer that risk once again to the owner through the agreements, and that's how I see it. So you know, that's kind of where I would leave it as. Anybody else wish to say anything, ask questions, make comments? If not, we have someone who's ready to make a motion. So, council member, you have anything you wish to say?
Yes, I do. I'd like
Please.
to move approval.
Okay, I was going to give that honor to Councilmember Smith as she had asked for it, but if you'd like
All
to
right.
second, if that would be okay.
I defer to my colleague. I always defer to my colleague.
Thanks, Marvin. Mayor, I move to approve item 10.3.
So is there a second? Councilmember Brown, would you like
Yes.
to second?
Gladly.
So there's a second. So there's a first and second.
Just
This
a
is-
point
oh,
of
yes, by all means,
clarification. Is
by all
this
means.
per the stipulations provided? Okay.
Yes.
I don't know if you have to do that within,
Yeah, it's with the attachments. I don't know, Dennis, do you see that they're,
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I was asked by staff, and I agree, I wanted to clarify that we are agreeing to sign a Prop 207 waiver as an added stipulation for the record. We've talked to your city attorney and to staff about it.
perfect. Does that need to be part of the amendment? Okay, does that need to be part of the motion? Okay, so would you amend your motion to include the stipulations, just as Councilwoman Gussie had said, as well as the Prop 207 waiver?
Yes, I changed my motion to approve item 10.3 with the stipulations as attached to the item and with the Prop 207 stipulation. Waiver, thank you.
Thank you. Do you second that? Okay. With that, any further discussion on those? Seeing none, we're going to move to a roll call, please, as this is an ordinance.
Councilmember Smith? Yes. Councilmember Wade?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chapados?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Manfredi?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gussie?
yes.
Mayor Price?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you very much for all your hard work. Appreciate it. That takes to item 10.4. The mayor and city council shall discuss and possibly take action on offering a 3-year employment agreement to Ricky Horst to serve as the city of Maricopa, as its city manager. This is for discussion and action. Okay. We'll get to that. So as you know, we have worked very diligently to come with a individual whom we think will serve the city well. Again, we won't probably go into too many details, but if any of the council members wish to talk on this, I think we're all very excited about the possibilities of continuing to move the city forward. As I explained earlier, how city manager works. There's a lot of work ahead of us, and we have a lot of ideas and a lot of things in which we've tried or we'll keep trying, but we have a lot going on. So again, I think that I would only address one thing. One of the things that is often stated in the public side is the need for of longevity. And I will say that your council members also addressed this very heavily. I think everybody wants someone that's going to have buy-in, that's going to stay and help make things happen over a long period of time. At the end of the day, you don't get to force anybody's hand, right? Anybody can leave for any reason, whether it's moving on in their career, whether it's a family emergency, whether it's something else. And yet you can stipulate these things through the contract. And so one of the things we batted around was longer contract periods, but there's a flip side to that. And that is what if you don't like the individual? What if they're not working out? What if things aren't going so well? And so then what? You're kind of stuck in that measure of being a 10-year contract or a 5-year contract or whatever. And so, one of the things that we look to do is we look to establish something that is, along the regulations of what ICMA or credentialed managers do. 2 to 3 years is something that most give and is pretty standard, as well as it gives us the ability to have the annual reviews of the city manager, something that we make public and we talk about. And also it gives us the ability to come back and say, in a few years, are they doing the job, and renegotiate contracts at that point. And so I think that we were able to reach consensus with Mr. Horst about a time. While it's a 3-year time frame here, I know that he expressed much longer time to all of us, and I think that we believe that. We believe that he has that desire and buy-in to stay here for 5, 6, 7 years, maybe even a decade. And so I think that's the goal of what we're all trying to accomplish, but time will tell. But I think in the meantime, we've done this 3-year term for the reason of saying that way it lets us both evaluate each other. One of the things that we often say is that we're not only interviewing that individual, but they're interviewing us, and so we're trying to find a match and a fit. So I think that Mr. Horst fills that bill. So, council, any questions or concerns on this, Vice Mayor?
Not a concern, but I just wanted to acknowledge to everybody that participated in this process. The one comment we heard pretty consistently was, despite if somebody had a favorite, we had 2 very good candidates that were very capable, and we appreciate all that feedback. It was said to me personally, and I know some of my fellow council members heard the same thing, you can't actually make a bad choice. Both have strengths, both have some challenges and concerns, but at the end of the day, we had 2 very capable, qualified professional candidates. one had a little bit more experience than the other, but I think that I was pleased with the whole process. I was pleased with the three-tiered approach of input and feedback, and I was very, very impressed with the caliber of candidate that we had to choose from. So just want to thank you.
Indeed. Thank you. Councilmember Wade.
With all due respect, Mr. Mayor, in reference to the time spent or the time we're expecting the city manager to be in our community, I would have liked to see it go a little bit longer. I would like to have seen our contract be extended a little bit long. As I expressed, I want somebody that was going to be here to support Maricopa as we move forward. So I just wanted to put that on public record.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? With that, I would accept a motion, Council. Vice
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the contract with Ricky Horst to be the next city manager for the city of Maricopa.
Is there a second? Motion and a second. With that, any further discussion? Council, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Horst. We'll see you here in a couple of months. I think June 25th is the start date, so that's when we'll expect to see him. All right. That concludes our council meeting for this evening. Again, council, we have no additional e-session, so you're free to go home. I know you're excited about that. So with that, can I have a motion to conclude, please? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. See you in a week.
And yeah. Well, Tina already left. She's going to go pick her up and then meet me at the pond. Okay. No problem.